So let's talk about some specific scenarios. First, endometriosis. So often people say, well, is endometriosis a byproduct of estrogen dominance? And I think the answer is not necessarily. Yes, endometriosis is influenced by estrogen, but really endometriosis is more a gut microbiome thing or an autoimmune thing. So if you've ever been diagnosed with endometriosis, or you have really, really painful menstrual cycles that generally the pain starts before you start bleeding, what's happening is that the blood flow is actually kind of getting out of the uterus and sometimes sneaks out of the fallopian tubes, sometimes into the abdominal cavity. Sometimes it can create scar tissue. And so many women with endometriosis, you know what I'm talking about. You've had surgeries maybe to go in and clean it up, and your menstrual cycles are painful. So the thought now is that it's more an autoimmune scenario and a gut microbiome scenario. So in that, we need to get your GI map. I can finally order them. Okay, so we can get your GI map ordered, and Katie and I both can review that. And often there's some big ahas that can happen there. And then from an autoimmune perspective, we're gonna perpetually focus on how do we decrease overall inflammation and help the immune system balance, okay? So that's everything that we do in the midst of this program. The gut health, the adrenal health, the thyroid health, the liver health, right? It's getting back to helping you feel safe, stress or bless. It's going to always choose stress, survival over bless. So the more that we can find ways to get into that calm, safe space, our immune system turns back on. Also remember that 70% of the immune system exists within the gut. So if you have been eating lots of gluten, you've been on antibiotics, you've been taking ibuprofen, you've been on birth control pills, you've been drinking alcohol, lots of dairy, if you've experienced fatigue, brain fog, any of that, we have to assume that there is either some gut dysbiosis, meaning an imbalance in the good and not so good bacteria, and or leaky gut. Okay, so estrogen, when you think about the menstrual cycle, we have the follicular phase and we have the luteal phase, okay? For those of you that are still ovulating and having bleed times, the first half of your cycle is that estrogen dominant time, okay? Estrogen is going in, it's building up the endometrial lining, it's triggering ovulation, okay? It's coming predominantly from the ovaries. Ovulation is considered the main event. Once you've ovulated, that's what triggers the production of progesterone. And the second half of the menstrual cycle, i.e. your luteal phase, is progesterone dominant. Now, that's assuming that we only have ovaries. But remember, I talk about the HPA axis, which is the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the adrenals, okay? They're all communicating with one another, as well as the gut and the brain and the thyroid and the ovaries. So in the midst of our time together, that's why we're perpetually going to adrenal health, making sure the thyroid is functioning well, and also addressing that hypothalamic piece. The hypothalamus is the place where old trauma is stored. So hence, I encourage all of you to do your rest sessions. Where does estrogen come from? Like I said, it mainly comes from the ovaries until the ovaries start slowing down, then the adrenals carry the brunt of it, unless you've lived a high stress life and you've been exhausted and haven't taken care of yourself. And then when the adrenals are called on and they're like, sorry, my close sign is up on my door, I got nothing for you. And so the women that I talk to that are having a really horrible experience of their 40s, 50s, and 60s, when the adrenals are supposed to be picking up the brunt of it, i.e. hot flashes, more exhaustion, lots of irregular menstrual cycles, difficulty sleeping, more pronounced irritability. Often what I'm thinking is, okay, well, this is a byproduct of the adrenals not being given what they needed for the decade leading up. Now, that doesn't mean you judge yourself or you beat yourself up, but it does mean that starting today, we start doing a better job at caring for your adrenals.